So the Capital Improvements Board, first, the challenge that we confronted with the Capital Improvements Board should not be a surprise. It was an intentional move by Mitch Daniels and Luke Kenley when Mayor Peterson was asking for support to build Lucas Oil Stadium. As part of the request to build it, there's a request for interim operating funds. So we're going to knock down the convention center, we're going to expand it, we're going to build Lucas Oil Stadium, reverse order. But we know through that process there is going to be a gap, a period of time where we won't be generating revenue. We can't have big conventions in a convention center that's under construction. We've got to build Lucas Oil first before we can expand the convention center. So when Lucas Oil goes up, there's going to be more expenses and there's not going to be as much revenue to cover those expenses. So we need some interim operating dollars. We need to save a few dollars to help us get through that gap. Governor Daniels was very clear in the negotiations when he took control of those assets by establishing the Indiana State Building and Convention Authority. He stripped out those interim operating dollars from the budget. So there should not be a surprise, number one. It was political gamesmanship on the part of Governor Daniels that created this fiscal challenge. That's number one. Number two, those assets under the control of the Capital Improvements Board, the Convention Center, Lucas Oil, Conseco, and the other entities that are in that sports district generate quite a bit of tax revenue. That those investments and the assets in Marion County, including the people and the physical assets, generate more tax dollars for the state than we get in return. Those dollars are in turn dispersed to the other 91 counties to do good in those communities. From a business standpoint, you wouldn't do that. If these are the assets that are producing revenue and value, those are the assets that you protect, and those are the assets that you invest in. The short-sightedness of Governor Daniels and Luke Kenley and others who pretend to understand business has been, no, we're going to take those assets and we're going to starve them of revenue, creating the problem that we confront today in Marion County. I think it's incumbent on the next mayor to say, look, Marion County delegation in the State House, we have assets here in Marion County that generate tremendous value, not only for our own community, but for the entire state. And we need to operate as a team and convince and share with the others from around the state that they need to protect those assets. Those assets are just as valuable to them as they are to us. Number two, there are some, I think, operating issues that can be addressed and improved. The current mayor issued an RFP to try to get some of those ideas, bring them to the table to say, okay, how can we apply those, and do we outsource to another third party? Currently what happens is that the Capital Improvement Board already has a contract to outsource the management of some of those facilities day to day, and the janitorial service and whatnot. Again, I think that's just sound management to be able to look at those things. Have the right people, smart, capable people in place who understand how to manage big facilities like that, how to bring economies of scale, how to improve purchasing. We can do that within our own capabilities, I think. There are a lot of very bright, talented people here in Indianapolis. As it relates to the water company, there's a host of legal and contractual issues that would need to be fully vetted. The city has purchased the water company. We have a long-term contract with a third party to manage the water company. There was a report released a few months ago that looked at the governance structure for that arrangement, and it was not too favorable in terms of how that governance structure was set up, what are the performance metrics, and how are folks held accountable, and what are the results for failure to meet those standards or exceed those standards. There's a proposal by the current mayor to sell the water company. I think that's foolish, as I've already said. It's foolish for two reasons, a public policy reason and a financial reason. The public policy reason is simply that we as humans don't survive without water. this community doesn't thrive and grow without access to clean, safe, reliable water supply. There is no better way for us to control our destiny than to control the supply of fresh water to the citizens of Indianapolis. For that reason, I think we should, as a community, control the water company. It's foolish from a financial reason. The initial impetus to say, hey, we ought to sell this is because we had long-term fixed rate debt, think of it as your 30-year mortgage, swapped for short-term variable rate debt. So I took a 1-year adjustable rate. In the financial meltdown, that variable rate debt became extremely expensive. Now we have, to my knowledge, addressed the variable rate debt and paid the penalties associated with getting rid of it. But that has not stopped the push to privatize it. Because as citizens we don't survive without clean water, from a business standpoint, we know that will always be a service, a good, the water, that will be in demand. So it's a very reliable cash flow business. We know how much you're going to drink, how many showers you're going to take, and loads of laundry and whatnot you'll use year to year. It's a very reliable business. We also know pretty well what does it cost to keep the infrastructure up to date. How much does it cost to fix pipes? How much does it cost to keep a hydrant function? As we've seen recently with multiple fires where the fire hydrants were not working, those investments haven't been made. We've also seen, as the announcements recently of, hey, by the way, your water's going to smell and taste like chlorine because we're dumping chlorine into the system to clean it out, that it's really not that great a water quality. So I would not sell the water company for those two reasons. Number one, the fiscal issue. All right, you can address the capital structure of the business. It's fairly straightforward. Number two, you can address the shortcomings in the governance structure by improving that. That may or may not affect what the terms of the existing agreement are with Veolia. It's a long-term contract, what the variables are. But I think sound business people can come up with and understand what flexibility exists, number one. And number two, I think the citizens of Indianapolis expect clean water. And clean water doesn't mean we meet the basic thresholds. I think it means we exceed them. So I would not sell the water company because I think it's good public policy to own it. I think the managerial issues associated with the problems that we have today can be fixed. And I think the capital structure can be improved so that we don't have these kinds of challenges of fire hydrants not working, water smelling and tasting like chlorine.